Cognition, learning, and motivation. Cognition refers to the mental processes that are essential to learning. Another form of cognition, metacognition, refers to the thinking of thinking. Knowing how to change a flat tire is an example of cognition in which an individual applies prior knowledge to a current situation. There are 4 elementary mental processes that relate to cognition. The first process, attention, refers to how we focus when learning something new. Encoding describes how we interpret what our attention was on. Storage refers to how we retain our interpretation of what we learned in our memory, and retrieval refers to how we are able to locate these memories. Cognition is related to the school of psychology known as behaviorism, which views classical conditioning as a key factor of cognitive development and based heavily on Pavlov's work on classical conditioning. In this perspective, people learn to associate stimuli to anticipate events, like Pavlov's experiment on salivating dogs. Pavlov conditioned dogs to salivate to the ring of a bell. He did this by ringing a bell whenever he would give food to dogs, and with time, the dogs learned to associate food with the sound of a ringing bell. This is the foundation to Pavlov's term, classical conditioning. The dogs learned to associate stimuli, which in this case was the bell, and to anticipate events, which is eating in this case, from the stimuli. Following Pavlov's principles of classical conditioning, John B. Watson developed a school of psychological thought known as behaviorism to study human behavior and emotions through classical conditioning. In Watson's famous and ethically questionable Little Albert experiment, Watson proved that humans respond to classical conditioning just like dogs do. He proved this true by conditioning a baby to be petrified of mice by banging a hammer and scaring the child whenever a mouse was nearby. In 1911, Edward Thorndike, a psychologist, formulated the law of effect to understand behavior. This law suggests that organisms will continue to behave the way they do if they are positively reinforced, but if reinforcement is negative, they will change their behavior. B.F. Skinner, a psychologist, did not agree entirely with Pavlov's and Watson's theory that humans can be understood only with classical conditioning. Instead, Skinner, influenced by Thorndike's law of effect, argued that human behavior is motivated by the consequences we receive for the behavior. In education, for example, these students are operantly conditioned to be rewarded when they raise their hand and wait to talk rather than blurting out answers. In response to the early theories on human behavior, Albert Bandura developed the social learning theory in which he argued that human behavior is not based entirely on classical conditioning. Instead, human behavior is influenced by cognitive processes. Human behavior is influenced by personal factors such as cognition and environmental factors such as access to quality education or resources. These cognitive processes, to Bandura, were specific steps in the modeling process, which is a theory that suggests people learn through observing others and modeling their behavior. These steps consist of attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. In education, a student may be paying much attention on what they are seeing or learning, but how they interpret it depends on how others view it. If several classmates verbally express their hate for a given topic, then others may interpret the topic similarly. Though the theory on learning styles and preferences has been proven not entirely accurate, I still see some of my personal qualities relating to visual and kinesthetic learning styles. Applying the 4 mental processes of cognition to my learning styles, my attention is best kept when I am able to visualize what I am learning, and these visuals allow me to better interpret the material. This then aids in how I store the information in my memory and how I can use this knowledge in future situations. Cognition is necessary in the learning process. Cognition allows us to remember the knowledge we have obtained throughout our lives. If we had no cognition, then we would have no memory of what we have learned in the past. Life is a constant learning process beginning the day we are born and ending the day we die. What we learned as children provided the foundation for learning at later ages, which provides a new foundation for learning at even later ages. This is all because of cognition.